welcome again to the Villarigo, where we tried to extend the room for you. It resisted, unfortunately. So we are as we are. Windows are open. I hope you can breathe. But we like packed room because first, that makes us forget the COVID totally entirely, which is a good thing. And second, we love to have people here. I'm Camelia Kamilova. I'm the co-director of the Global Cities Hub together with my colleague Anto Duong and my colleague Andras Soreni, who is receiving the caterer for the dinner after, and my colleague Pauline, who just launched the meeting. We have interpretation online, French to English, English to French. If someone needs this, you need to connect on Zoom and use earphones. That's the modern way, because as you see, we cannot put interpretation booths behind. If you need earphones, we can provide. So that's one thing. Just discreetly, you go out and say to Andres that you need earphones. If not, you listen in English, and if our interpreters do not have anyone who follows, that's not a problem. We still have them. With no further ado, and again, welcome to the Geneva City, to the Global Cities Hub. Sorry, we changed the name 1 week ago. We are a diplomatic initiative supported by the Swiss government, the canton, and the city of Geneva. And this very evening is also supported by the Swiss government, not our usual suspects from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs International Geneva Division, but kind of new partners, which is the Sustainability Durability Division. Marcus Ruge is with us. Thank you very much for your support. We have also other colleagues from Bern, also Stephanie, who is with us this evening. And thank you once again for your support. UNECE is obviously our good friend and partners. I'm not the moderator. I will sit calmly and listen to you, Gunnar. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Camelia. And indeed, I think we enjoyed very much together with you the Forum of Mayors, which was, I think, wonderful discussion, and big thanks to Global Cities Hub for the very important support and for this cooperation and the partnership, but of course our colleagues from UN Habitat as well. So thank you so much for coming and being with us on this. As we heard yesterday and today, the localization SDGs, voluntary local reviews, it became really hot on the agenda. And we wanted to have this rather informal, very formal, because we have very high-level representatives, but also in a way very informal discussion in order to brainstorm, where we're going together towards that. It is my honor to have first of all the openings with Marcus Ruge, the coordinator of 2030 Agenda for Switzerland. So I will not spend more time and give the floor to you, please.
Thank you very much, Gulnara, Camelia, for the very kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, it's very nice to see so many of you here tonight. It's actually quite surprising after 2 intensive days of discussions and late in the evening. It has to do with the convening power of the, I don't know how to say it right, the global.
Even me, I say Geneva, but global. It's definitely.
Also on behalf of the government of Switzerland, very, very happy to welcome you here. The UNECE Mayors Forum is an important event for Switzerland. It is a mean of creating a platform for exchange for municipalities, for cities, on topics that are very relevant for the implementation for the 2030 agenda. I think we heard it 2 weeks ago at the SDG Summit. We heard it by all the heads of states. We are not on track in implementing the 2030 agenda. It's half time since 2015 when we committed to the 17 goals, 169 sub-goals, 217 indicators. If we continue what we did in the last 7 years, I think we will reach somewhere between 10 and 15% of the goals we have set ourselves. And also we need a lot more, I think, financing, and all these efforts that we need in the second half, they cannot only come from the national governments. I think that's not because I'm representative of a national government. It's just a simple fact. We need all levels of governments. We need the private sector. I was also attending some of the events at Building Bridges. We need the financial sector. we need civil society, we need science. And here we really have a unique opportunity to have cities gathered. In Switzerland, we are trying to involve cities and sub-national governments in two ways. First of all, when we do our VNRs, our voluntary national reviews, we have created a digital system. It's called sdigital2030.ch, where we reach out not only to national offices and to the Office of Statistics, but really to all levels of government, where we try to get data, but also information. And when we did this exercise 1.5 years ago, we had 500 institutions participating in this data and information collection exercise. And what happens if you provide data and information? You become committed. And actually, we were facing the challenge that our national report was only 50 pages long, and we could not integrate all the inputs that we received from the municipalities, especially. But what we have is this electronic platform that you can hook up to, and you can see SDG, let's say 11 cities. What did city of Geneva contribute to reaching SDG 11? And you can use this digital platform to look at this. We have done this exercise now once. We will do it again in 2026. And we, of course, hope that we can start benchmarking, that comparing developments and so on. So the digital tool for us is a very, very important means of including the cities. The second thing we would like to do, and where we look at some of your examples, which are much more advanced, is voluntary local reviews. We have not a city or a region that has come up with this. We have to do some convincing work, and I think we can help, that the UNECE Mayors Forum can help us actually to convince some of our cities to really come up with a VLR, because they can then have this platform where they can also share their experience, where they can share best practices and also share their data and information. Personally, I was at the High Level Week in New York. I'm not so convinced that the High Level Week in New York is the very best platform for exchange among municipalities, because it's very, I have to say, also objectively, it's very much also nation-oriented, and we have national representatives, which is a good thing, and we have to also cope with it. There are formats for cities, but I think we have a real potential to make a complementary effort in other places where we can have exchange platforms, meaningful exchange platforms, like the one here in Geneva. I will stop with this. I will thank you for the invitation again, and wish you a very nice evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marcus, for really highlighting evidence-based, because this is something that I think we're all struggling, because there are millions of approaches. So we're really happy to continue discussing on this. We know there are some patchy best practices about digital platform. So it's really important for us, I think, also on global level, to develop this discussion, understand how in different contexts it works, because there's no one solution, there are multiple solutions for that, and really they can work in different contexts. I would like to give floor now to Dmitry Malyasin, Deputy Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe.
Thank you. Thank you, Gulnara. Good evening, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. My dear colleague, Michael Miller, the Deputy Executive Director of UN Habitat, Marcus Roby, and of course our dear host at the Global Cities Hub, based in Geneva still. We are very pleased to be doing this. It's a studio, so we hope we're gonna get some creative content out of this discussion, not just speeches from the likes of us. I'd like to make 3 points. Use the Forum of Mayors as an accelerator of partnerships. We can create new approaches to how to tackle Agenda 2030 at local level through collaboration, through discussing it with those people who are actually responsible for it. Responsible in most cases by virtue of the citizens, of voters, bringing them into office. So there is a real accountability loop which doesn't always exist at national level, but is often there at local level. And mayors have budgets in their hands, also in most cases. We discussed it today at the Building Bridges. And finally, mayors have a unique tool at their hand, urban planning, rethinking the future of cities from the point of view of urban design, public spaces, land management. So these are very material things that will make it or break it on Agenda 2030. So let's use the forum of mayors and the kinds of gatherings as we're having today on the margins of the forum of mayors as a space to create new partnerships, learn from each other. Second, we are very serious about bringing the knowledge, experience, and views of cities, and specifically mayors, to the UN, to the core intergovernmental machinery of the UN. I use the word machinery, not in a bad sense, but in a good sense. Behind every success, there are nuts and bolts. We don't see it, but they're there. The power of multilateralism is not just in the big calls of the General Assembly and the Security Council. It's also very much in the intergovernmental bodies of such parts of the UN system as UNECE and other regional commissions, or UN Habitat, where we create norms and standards, and this is what we specialize on in UNECE. So I really hope that beyond even the Committee on the Housing and Land Management, which will start tomorrow, and to which the Forum of Mayors already made concrete recommendations, we can actually take these to other intergovernmental bodies that influence the policy or norm making at the UN more broadly. Thirdly, it's the interregional nature of this collaboration. I think the hub was renamed for a reason. The global outlook that International Geneva has now has a very specific manifestation in this partnership. We're very pleased to have our friends and colleagues from the other regional commissions. We really appreciate you being here in person and not just coming and listening, but actively driving the agenda, moderating, and bringing along partners. I think this global approach is never easy for a regional commission, but together with partners like UN Habitat, which is a global UN structure and a global cities hub, we can do it. And we rely on your support, and sharing across regions is going to be very important for us going forward. On the practical level, with many thanks to our partners and donors, including Switzerland, but also others, including the UN Development Account, and other key partners, we're trying to also turn the policy discussion we're having here into practice on the ground, including in the so-called program countries of our region, emerging economies, developing economies that still require a lot of capacity building support. That includes targeting cities and be it in the form of smart sustainable city profiles, or helping cities with COVID pandemic times, resilience and recovery. Now helping, for example, Ukrainian cities with master planning for reconstruction in the context of the war in Ukraine, and now also with our newest project with our sister regional commissions, helping cities be much more resilient in the face of natural disasters. We see how much devastation climate-induced disasters bring to cities around the world. From it's not just developing world. It's also, you saw what happened in New York just a few days ago, and we all know what happened here in Europe last year. But developing countries get disproportionately affected from climate-induced disasters. So we're trying to support the policy conversation with project work on the ground. We need more of you to get engaged. We need more donor support, and we also need to learn lessons from this work. Finally, VLRs. Look, I used to be based in the field. I was head of the UNDP office in Armenia for 4 years. I can tell you, VLR as a format is more powerful than VNR in many ways. VNRs are an aggregation of too many points of view, and they end up being, well, how do I put it? The best common denominator. And VLR, you actually have a chance to tell the story of a city, of a locality, and actually chart pathways to achieving the SDGs. There is never one pathway to SDG. There are always multiple scenarios because unfortunately our world is a VUCA world. It's very unpredictable, very complex. And so can we use VLRs and the next generation of VLRs with your support as a real way to strategize, to have strategic foresight on what awaits and how cities can respond, is what I propose for this studio conversation that we're going to have today. I'll end with the thanks to our hosts once again, to UN Habitat, UCLG, UN DESA, and the University of Geneva being co-organizers with us. And I'd like to have also special words of thanks to Gulnara, who is a real driver of a lot of this conversation at the UNECE, and a dear colleague and friend on whom we've been relying, on whose leadership we've been relying for many years now. Thank you so much, Gulnara.
Bravo, Gulnara.
Thank you so much, Dmitry. And I think that the fact that we're in this venue of Local Cities Hub, I think it really creates lots of great, very good, interesting ideas, which really help us to move further. Yes, I think when we were starting discussing with Camelia at the side events, we were discussing that VLR is, we don't really know exactly how to move further. And this is why actually we have Shipra here as well, to understand how we can put it into the global context, because we have lots of different ideas, but they're in different places. So I think this is really lots of creative ideas which are coming together, which I agree is that tomorrow at the committee session, I hope you're coming.
Yeah.
So tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Depends on the number of drinks that
because tomorrow we'll be also discussing it, bringing it to the committee attention, to the government's attention, this topic of the voluntary local reviews. Yes, I also, Nick, I think very much second you about the VLRs being much more powerful instruments, because this is a budget, and without local engagement, and we don't have enough of local engagement yet into the national processes. So if we are able to activate it, we will definitely get to much quicker implementation of the 2030 agenda. So this is already great, lots of good ideas on the table. So colleagues, we are really inviting more ideas this evening. And yes, it is a studio. The studio is actually part of the joint project, which is led by UN Habitat. It is a joint project where we have 4 pilot cities now in different countries. It's together with UN Habitat, UN DESA, UCLG. I hope UCLG is here as well. Yes, Alberto. And yes, we are so happy, Nar, to have you, Shipra, and colleagues here, because I think our partnership is growing and getting more systematic. We are very excited about that. We are looking forward to listen again tomorrow morning. And now we would like to give you floor to, as a part of the opening of this meeting.
Thanks very much, Gulnara. Thanks to the Global Cities Hub, UN DESA, UNECE, the city and the canton of Geneva, of course the Swiss Confederation, the University of Geneva, and everybody for this wonderful cooperation. And indeed, we as the UN Urban Agency are more than thrilled and more than happy to, of course, be part of this conversation. We do like hubs, labs, studios, definitely more than formal meetings, statements by delegations, as Marcus has mentioned. Indeed, the high-level week in New York may not necessarily be the most interactive work and the most interactive opportunity. In my previous professional life, I spent 11 years in New York as a diplomat. And for 3 years, I co-chaired the General Assembly revitalization process. And actually, what happened this year is against all the principles that we had agreed in the revitalization process. So it's frustrating, I have to say, but well, it is what it is. But that's not the topic of our discussion today. I am walking often now with this small booklet, which Shipra and Graham and colleagues, of course, know very well, and I hope that you will all get yours. This is the pocket version of our second SDG 11 update or SDG 11 progress report. And I'm not sure if the use of the word progress is quite pertinent and quite fitting in this case. I used to be an English teacher, so of course we can always play a little bit with the semantics of the words. But you know where I'm heading. That unfortunately we have so many areas where sufficient progress has not been achieved in SDG 11. And please don't blame UN Habitat. We of course we are not hiding from our responsibility. On the contrary, we are ready to work even harder and to do even more. But we need precisely conversations and partnerships like this one to do that. And I can share with you that we are very much working in many tracks, including on data and of course on other areas to see how we can accelerate, how we can do better, and you know, where are the particular areas where we need to catch up. Of course, yes, there has been pandemic. Nobody questions that. There are other challenges, conflicts, and I don't need to remind you of armed conflicts right next to the border of my own country, of Slovakia, but also conflicts that are caused by natural disasters or other challenges. But of course, there are other unfortunate and challenging developments that we have to take into account also on the local level. But I'm an internal optimist, so I think we have to look for solutions. And this conversation tonight is important also from that point of view, that we would like you, the representatives of local and regional authorities, to not to only be part of these conversations, but of course to be part of the solutions that we are trying to design. And it is in partnerships that we can really achieve more. I only joined UN Habitat in April, but you may already know that, of course, partnerships is at the very heart of my own mandate, and also in my heart for promotion of this important cooperation. So we certainly look forward to continuing working with all our partners here today, but in particular with the local and regional authorities to see how we can accelerate important things. According to our findings and this booklet, we would need to build 96,000 new housing units every day globally to catch up with the gap. We have about 318 million people who are experiencing some kind of homelessness globally. And that certainly, we can certainly not blame developing countries for the homelessness phenomenon. On the contrary, it's actually more challenging for many developed countries. And of course, the question is how to address some of these challenges. At the center of it is housing. We are very much focusing now on housing as an important phenomenon, or as really the key issue that opens up so many other opportunities. I often refer to housing as an access issue, because if we can address adequate housing, then we can also talk about access to water, sanitation, access to energy, but also access to healthcare, to education. But without housing, somehow a lot of these other things are falling apart. I'm sure you will agree. Second important issue, of course, is localization. And I don't need to preach to the converted. You know, all of you are here because you are committed to localization, and really this is the main message that we have tried to bring to the SDG Summit, and that we are also bringing to you from the SDG Summit. And localization is about all the SDGs. It's certainly not only related to SDG 11, because it is only by bringing all this work down to the local level and cooperating with the local and regional authorities, but also with other local partners, that we are able to accelerate and really do better in the implementation of all the SDGs. Even before I joined UN Habitat, I used to say that SDG 11 is probably the most cross-cutting SDG. Colleagues in New York never necessarily liked it because they thought that I'm trying to, focus too much on one issue. But I think maybe in these circles you will agree with me a bit more than what we sometimes experienced in New York. Indeed, if we can ensure that we achieve better results with our sustainable cities policies, we are contributing in major ways to so many other areas and issues, whether it's climate, waste management, energy, water, gender, and so on and so on. So of course, this is very much at the center of our attention. You are already familiar with our localization work, with the Local2030 Coalition that UN Habitat serves as permanent co-chair of, and there are other important UN agencies that help us co-chairing that important platform. Soon enough, by the end of this month, we'll be able to launch and fully operationalize our new Local2030 office, which will be based, or is already based, in Bilbao, Spain. So we certainly look forward to your cooperation also in that important context. And of course, there is a lot more happening along these lines. Just 4 quick points before I conclude. There is really a lot of work that we need to continue focusing, despite the achievements that we have achieved. One of them is national decentralization frameworks that are often inadequate. And I'm sure you will be able to testify from your own experiences about the same, specifically when it comes to the devolution of decisional power and resources assigned to local governments to deliver on their mandates. Of course, our work suggests that significant revenue opportunities at the local level remain really under-leveraged, with most cities in developing countries in particular only raising about 20% of their revenue potential, which is a major gap. Secondly, data. And of course, it's become a bit of a catchphrase already, at least at UN Habitat. And we are very committed to improve our situation there, teaming up with actors such as the World Bank, the OECD, and others to see, how our data work could be scaled up. Data availability at the local level is still limited, and of course we need your own inputs to improve overall situation there. Thirdly, vulnerable groups remain structurally underrepresented or entirely excluded from decision making. And this is a long-standing challenge. Only 20 countries, representing 15% of countries with data, have reached over 40% women in local decision-making bodies. And that's a major gap. And finally, SDG localization is still approached through short-term and ad hoc initiatives rather than a holistic approach to shape sustainable development at the local level. So we hope that also through events like that, we will be able to better shape up systematic, long-term, holistic approaches, which are absolutely needed. And conversations, platforms like that can be very helpful. And also VLRs certainly are an important contribution in the same context. I agree fully with what has been said, that VNRs may be even misleading sometimes, or they are just a snapshot of the various contexts. But let's not somehow demotivate governments to do them, or let's not be overly negativistic, but focused rather on the power of the VLRs. And I have seen in my own country, but also in other cases, how much of a transformational role they can play when, of course, there is a participatory process that leads to the VLR and all that. We were joking earlier that sometimes it takes good examples to persuade cities to go along that path. I was still ambassador in New York when I was trying to persuade the Bratislava mayor to join the VLR movement, and of course then they asked me for examples and all that, and one catchword actually was very helpful, and it was Helsinki. So when I said that Helsinki did it, somehow I had a feeling that the conversation started going in a different direction. So maybe there are other catchphrases or catchwords that can help, and I'm simplifying, of course. But VLRs really are of great value, and really I would like to thank you very much for all your efforts in that particular context. The UN Habitat is finalizing the development of the methodology for action-oriented VLRs aimed at complementing the existing regional and global VLR guidelines with practical tools to support local governments in translating the VLR process into transformative actions. We hope that these efforts will be useful to many of you, also here in the ECE region, and that we can achieve better results. So thank you again for having us and for this important partnership. We are very much committed. As you can see, we have come in a strong representation. We don't take things for granted, and looking forward not only to the discussion tonight, but to further excellent cooperation with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lina, for this very good remarks. And I think we also have here around mayors, so it would be really interesting to hear representatives of the cities as well, to hear from you. What did you think about these key topics? Because for us at the UN, of course, I think many things may be new or something what we didn't think about. I think, for instance, VLR and the longer term approach. This is interesting. I think we all were catching up, so we're trying to do everything quickly and doing everything short term. So I think this is kind of a very interesting idea. So it'd be very interesting to hear actually from the cities as well. What do they think? What, in your opinion, the issues are priorities? What is important? What is less important? So I think this is our latest as a panel of the cities, but also those cities who are not on the panel. Still, we would like to hear from you. To understand, to kind of bounce back the ideas that were presented by colleagues now at the beginning. And now I'm very happy to give floor to Shipra Narantsuri, who is the Chief of Urban Practice Branch, but who's actually, I think, working much more on the Local2030 Coalition. And I think, Shipra, you are now especially in many big meetings, in very important discussions. So we'll be really interested to hear, what are the latest ideas, trends, and where we're going at the global level. Please.
Thanks very much. And I'm not sure it's appropriate for me to follow on from what the DD said, or there's much left to say, but a few things. So on behalf of the team that leads the SDG localization rocket to Habitat, as well as the Local2030 Coalition, which our Deputy Executive Director also mentioned, Gulnara, you also mentioned. First of all, it's great to be here. So thanks very much for having us. Thanks for the great partnership. Thanks for the great advocacy that has led us to this day. I think picking up on the optimistic note, the localization has been sort of the fil rouge through New York, from Nairobi to New York to Geneva, and in many, many other global platforms. We don't take this for granted. It has taken several years for the processes of localization and the role of local and regional governments to be acknowledged and to be supported. And many partners have invested a lot of effort and a lot of time in it, but this is really not something that we came to today. The second thing is that, of course, we are regressing on many fronts when it comes to the SDGs. At the same time, local and regional governments are at the forefront of battling a number of crises. We've also heard about that. But local and regional governments are not able to, and let us not expect them to handle these issues alone. I think the framework of multi-level governance, the conversation around multi-level governance and multi-stakeholder engagement, this whole of society, whole of government approach that was mentioned is absolutely central. And that is also being slowly recognized. That it's not just either national governments or local governments that are supposed to fulfill these opportunities. We've heard about, the VLR movement. In 5 years, we've gone from 0 to 300 odd cities doing VLRs. I was shocked to hear that none of the cantons or cities in Switzerland have done that, and this is to be corrected. And the level of nuance and detail, indeed, that comes out in a VLR is much more than a VLR. The direction for intervention that comes out in a VLR is very different from a VNR. I think that's the main distinction I'd like to make. Well, when we talk about where we go next from here in all these different platforms, I think one of the big things is really the connection between VLRs and VNRs. It's not about either or, one serves one purpose, one serves another. But when you connect the two, and we have seen this in several cities and countries, where the two are connected, it provides an absolute impetus to the conversation around multi-level governance, around empowerment, around devolution, around decentralization, around role distribution, around budgetary, fiscal devolution. All of this happens when VNRs and VLRs talk to each other, when national and local governments talk to each other. This is where the role of the regional economic commissions becomes very, very important. And I know that not just UNECE, but our friends from SCAP and ESQUA and ECLAC are also in the room. It's very important that when the regional economic commissions are working with national governments on the VNR, so this agenda is constantly brought together. So the next step is really about connecting these much more intimately. The other next step, the piece of conversation that's been consuming us, is the so what question. So we have a VLR, so what? Just the VLR itself is not going to transform or change anything by itself. And I think, where do we go? The action-oriented VLRs, the VLR of Mafra, the mayor of Mafra is here. And mayors are really in a better position to answer this question. What are you going to do with the VLR that is going to change the city? How are you going to use it for transformative interventions? How are you going to use it to direct investment to the right places, to the right projects, to the right things which have multiple impacts? Unless we do that, we're not going to be able to make progress. A third thing that is still much needed is the whole advocacy and capacity building thread. And let's not underestimate the importance of advocacy and capacity building. Okay, 300 VLRs, but there are 10,000 cities in the world. And it's very important that even if they do or do not do VLRs, that they embrace the SDGs, they understand the importance of working with the SDGs as the guiding framework towards development. So let's not underestimate what we need to do in terms of advocacy and capacity building. And two big platforms for advocacy and capacity building. Of course, the high-level political forum, which I agree is much more much more dynamic as a space. We have the VLR-VSR days, we have the presentations, we have local governments, but also the World Urban Forum, which we do want to talk about. The next World Urban Forum is in Cairo in November 2024, and the focus of that is on localization of the global agendas. Not just the SDGs, but also the climate agenda, the peace agenda, the other agendas. And I think continuing these conversations in that is very important. A couple of more updates on the discussions that are going on globally. SDG cities, big flagship program that was initiated by UN Habitat is now embraced by the UN system through the Local2030 Coalition, with the target of impacting, transforming 1,000 cities to impact 1 billion lives. It's not just a tagline, it's very important because the numbers that we are seeing in this SDG 11 report are huge. So we really need to find mechanisms to go to scale. And that also answers the what next question. From data to investment is a value chain that needs to be embraced and adopted, and UN Habitat is trying to support that. Finally, an update on the coalition, on the UN system-wide Local2030 Coalition. We already heard a little bit about it, but the coalition was pitched as a high-impact initiative during the SDG summit. The high-level week was predictable, to use a diplomatic term. But the weekend before the high-level week, the SDG Action Weekend was extremely dynamic. The presence of local and regional governments in those forums, the rooms were full, the conversations were all about local and multi-level action. And I really hope that we can work with the entire UN system, regional commissions included, the 16 entities that are part of the Local2030 Coalition, to mainstream localization. There are a handful of entities that do localization. We have to be honest with each other. You know, the regional commissions, because you're naturally more intensively engaged with your constituencies in your regions, UNDP, UNICEF, UN Habitat, but the rest of the UN system sometimes doesn't even know where to start when it talks about local action. And that is what the Local2030 Coalition hopes to change and hopes to see differently, both now up to 2030 and fundamentally beyond 2030. In the post-2030 agenda, local and regional governments and localization cannot be an afterthought. It has to be central to whatever agenda we develop collectively going forward. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shipra. I think it was very useful to have the comprehensive overview of the situation. And it's very useful, I think, way forward. So now, in given this very global context, it would be really great to have very short maybe comments from our panelists first. I think we start with Kurt. Stefano, good to see you because you arrived. And then Albert of UCLG, that would be great. Also, you would report, but I would like, if we want to get to the drinks back, probably we need to get like for 3 minutes to 3 minutes. So, Kurt, you start.
I'll try in 2 or 3 minutes. But,
and you show your nameplate like
yes, I am here. I work with SDG, and let me also add my thanks to Global Cities Hub, ECE, Swiss government, and all the partners who organized this. I just wanted to make a few points on VLRs and VNRs. The first is, it is absolutely critical to engage stakeholders. It cannot be emphasized enough. We talk a lot about data, collecting data, but the engagement of stakeholders is foundational for VLRs. Stakeholders include national governments, includes civil society, includes citizens, includes NGOs, it includes the UN system. But one of the most important things is that sometimes when we support cities or national governments in undertaking these reviews, they rely on the traditional data sources and they come back and say, there's not enough data for us to assess. There's plenty of data. It's just not always housed in governments. So the engagement of stakeholders is essential for not only engaging citizens in helping to prioritize, but also identifying where data is outside of it. That has been talked about a lot, so I'll skip over it. The next part about the engagement between VNRs and VLRs, and Chipper really talks quite eloquently about that relationship and how we need to build it. But it also helps to establish policy coherence and establish where the gaps are between national and local policies. We can have the best VLR in the world, but if the national government doesn't have a national urban policy that supports it, then it's going to be ineffective. Next part is on partnerships. Partnerships across the UN system are important, but also partnerships with other entities that can support VLRs and VNRs. The UN system cannot be everywhere. We're not always going to be everywhere. VLRs, VNRs need to be done continuously. They can't just be done once and say this is our progress. Progress needs to be measured continuously. So part of it is building capacity of partners to help sustain VLRs and VNRs and look at where there's progress being made and where there are gaps that can be filled, not only by the UN system or by national or local departments, but by others as well. So that the engagement of partners and building a capacity of partners is also important. What all of these things do, excuse me, is to help build trust in the process. And without that trust, there's not going to be much investment. You have to have a robust planning process that engages multiple entities to ensure that when you get to the point where you're ready to implement, there is certainty in the investment. Whether you're relying on intergovernmental transfers from the national government, or whether you're relying on external finance. The last thing is, and with all due respect to the mayors, mayors come and go. And so VLRs really need to engage citizens. They are the owners. They finance the VLRs through their taxes, excuse me. And they ultimately are the beneficiaries of the actions that result from those And it also helps to provide continuity. So you don't want a VLR to be seen as one administration's priority that then gets lost when you leave office. So part of building a legacy is building the community that helps us support your initiatives going over a longer term. I'll stop there because I'm losing. I think I exceeded my time. I'll stop just because I can't speak anymore.
You've been a popular speaker.
Thank you so much. It's fair enough for you sitting because you are the coordinator of us this year and excellent coordinator.
I have to speak
Esther,
tomorrow too.
Because the 5 commissions, have a system that each year one of the commissions take coordination. So this year Kurt is coordinating us. So you spoke for all of us, so that kind of all makes sense. So, yeah, Stefano, OECD, thank you so much for your partnership. Great to see you and feel free.
Nameplate.
Thank you, Gulnara. Thank you, UNECE, for the invitation, UNHabitat, and Global City Hub for inviting the OECD. It's a great pleasure to be here. 3 minutes, so we'll try to focus on 3 key aspects that were already also touched by from previous speaker. As a CD, we launched in 2018 a program called the Territorial Approach to the SDGs. And with this program, we support cities, regions, mainly from OECD countries in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. One of the key aspects of this program is data and information, and to build on what the Deputy Executive Secretary of UNHabitat was saying, is really a key issue and a key gap. We developed at the OECD a web tool, a web platform that all cities and regions can access to see how they are progressing towards the 17 SDGs. And the good news is that we managed to collect indicator 135 to cover all the 17 goals in cities and regions. But the bad news is that we have some gaps, like inequality in cities or waste management that are really key issues that we cannot cover with our data gap. So this call to work together with UNHabitat, the World Bank, and others to strengthen the data at the local level is very well received by the OECD. What our data is telling us is the bad news, is that, as we heard, there is no progress or lack of progress in many targets of SDG 11, as we heard in July from the UNHabitat report, or looking at all the 17 goals at the OECD, we can see that 80% of the cities, 80% of the region in OECD, they have not achieved any of the targets of the 17 goals, and 70% of the cities have not achieved the targets for 15 out of the 17 SDGs. The main gaps are climate, are gender equality, in terms of SDG 11, transport, housing, air pollution. So this is the bad news. The good news, as also Shipra was mentioning and the others, is that cities and regions are taking the SDGs more and more seriously, maybe sometimes even more than the national government, as we heard. We did a survey together with SDSN and the European Committee of Regions to try to understand if SDGs are still a relevant agenda for cities and regions in this context where we had COVID, we had the war in Ukraine, and what they told us is that many of these cities and regions were not using the SDGs before the pandemic, but they are planning to do so as a recovery, as a framework for the recovery in the post-pandemic. The old 56% of the respondents, they also told us that they have developed a dedicated strategy and action plan to implement the SDGs. So there is interest, there is action at the local level. They also told us that political leadership is a key factor for success in implementing the SDGs, and financing, as we know, is one of the main gaps. So to support them in the last minute, to support cities and regions and the UN system on the localization process, as the CD, we are proposing a checklist for public action to localize the SDGs that has 5 main blocks: policy and strategy, where basically we are seeing how the SDGs can be a tool to manage trade-off between different conflicting objectives. So this complex framework sometimes can help the local government, and we saw this in the city of Bonn, where we did our policy dialogue, to manage trade-off between air pollution, where the idea was to reduce the number of cars, private cars used by the local population, and to contribute to climate objective, but at the same time try to make sure that these measures like congestion charges will not have a negative impact on inequality. So this is one of the aspects that we are looking. The second one is multi-level governance. I will not be long on that because Shipra was already super comprehensive. So the idea is that even national governments are seeing more and more the value of the SDGs as a framework to align priority across levels of government. We have programs in Germany, in Japan, that support financially and in terms of capacity their city to localize the SDGs. The third one is very important, is the financing. When I was discussing with Yves from the city of Strasbourg, how cities are more and more trying to do an SDG budgeting to see both how they are allocating the budget against the SDGs, but also how the mainstreaming the SDGs in the budgeting process can be a tool to make sure that we have enough resources to achieve the sustainable development goals. That information I already mentioned. The final point is really stakeholder engagement, and here I will mention 2 key actors, in addition to, of course, the public sector, the private sector. We know that private companies are more and more using also the SDGs as a tool to go beyond corporate social responsibility and include the sustainability as a core business. And university, we are launching a new project because we see that in some city was actually the university starting the localization process, and I think it is a key aspect of that also UNECE is developing. And in Bristol or in LA, this was again the university starting the localization process. So we stop here. As a city, we stand ready to really work with all of you to let's say adapt the tool that we develop in OECD countries to support more broadly the countries in developing countries. And thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you, Stefano, and we will continue discussion. We're going to continue discussion tomorrow in the UN committee session. I think your proposals are really very, very practical, And indeed, even our UN forums, we actually see it already that we have much more academia, much more private sector participating also in UN meetings, and it helps us to encourage them to be engaged. So I would like to give floor to Albert Nado. He is policy officer at the UCLG. So just also to make sure to mention that UCLG is really a very good partner in our project. I think again it's a very practical partnership where we're working with Sarah, who couldn't come today. But I think all the trainings that you're organizing, all the knowledge base that you're having, I think is very useful for all of us. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for this kind introduction. I send Sarah's regards.
Thank you so much.
We have Claudius from Bertie representing all the learning and capacity building work that we do at UCLG. And picking up a bit of some of the reflections that have been presented today. For UCLG and for the constituency of local and regional governments, 2023 has been a crucial year for localization. We have talked about the HLPF, but this year was SDG 11 review. So as Deputy Executive Director has showed, SDG 11 has had a special weight this year. We also understand SDG 11 as a transversal axis for the rest of the SDGs and an accelerator, but also the Assembly of UN Habitat was another big moment for localization and for the constituency. We all have a similar feeling, I think, regarding how the SDG Summit outcomes turn out. I liked the phrasing by Shifra on predictable. But I'd also liked the fact that she mentioned the weekend before. For those that were not there during the week, I recommend you to come earlier next time. The SDG Action Weekend was an amazing moment for acceleration. There had two parts, mobilization and acceleration. The first day, it was a great platform, and the platform that does UCLG and Global Task Force of Local and Regional Governments, which gathers 28 networks of cities around the world to convene the Local and Regional Governments Forum. This is an event that we convene yearly at the HLPF, the big milestone for SDG review and SDG state of implementation. So for us, this is a special year with the SDG Summit, with 2 HLPFs in 1 year. We presented what we have been doing for the last 7 years, which is a report on the state of localization. We have brought over 3,400 actions by over 1,500 local and regional governments from 145 countries. But this is not only about presenting what governments at the local level are doing. It's also about analyzing how this connects with action at the national level. And what this report has constantly showed is that there is not enough inclusion in VNR processes of cities and regional governments. We are talking about 30-something%. This is a figure that has steadily grown up over the 7 years, but we are far from, and I'm happy to have Stefano from OECD, since OECD delivered that magical number of 65% of targets of the SDGs linked to local and regional governments. If you do the math, we are far from close to the actual level to accelerate implementation. So this was a moment for us linking outreach, but also presenting research, monitoring, and reporting of what local and regional governments are doing. Besides this, and connected to this report, what the report shows is the need for more VLRs, not only integrating local and regional governments to VNRs, but also to develop more VLRs. And here we have the VLR-VSR days that we hold in the context of the HLPF every year together with UN Habitat and other partners. But we also have the work that the Local2030 Coalition is about or is starting to develop, but will accelerate in the coming months, partnership where UCLG is part of the steering committee. So in these branches, we are developing research and reporting, but we also have, as Gulnara mentioned at the beginning, a huge program of capacity building with modules on SDG localization, on monitoring and reporting, but also on decentralized cooperation. So this is the branch of tools that we aim to provide to our members, which are local and regional governments. But this is only part of the discussion. And I'm finishing with this, I've been particularly pleased to hear the DED these days mention the advisory group on local and regional governments to the Secretary General of the UN, which will be convened for the first time 3 days from now, sorry, next Friday. Why I'm quoting this group? Because what I would leave as final comment in this discussion is that we are missing the political dimension of VLRs, of reporting, and of capacity building tools. What has come up from this reporting is that we need to understand how to better finance local and regional governments, to understand how to build this multilateral system that has to be more networked, more inclusive, more efficient. What we all are looking at towards the Summer of the Future next year, that there is a need to understand what do we mean by inclusion. Do we mean bringing cities to the table? Do we mean to build a structural relationship between cities and states, between cities and the UN? So this is the kind of recommendation that this advisory group is meant to provide to the SG. And these recommendations will be one of the 2 channels that our constituency will bring to next September. The second one is a pact for the future of humanity. Why is that? Because the UN is building its own pact for the future. This will be the territorial contribution to this pact. We presented it also in the context of the last SDG summit, and it brings 3 axes and 10 commitments per axis: people, planet, and government. We don't have many because, fortunately for us, we ran out of them in September. It was a successful presentation, but this is the last message I want to deliver. Pair this capacity building resourcing, monitoring and evaluation with the political dimension as political actors who are not only implementers, but also who have to take decisions and understand their populations closer. So these 2 elements cannot be separated. And for us, it's important to make the link between the SDG summit and the summit of the future, because as the SG said, we are in a moment of rescue plan, and we have to do a to-do list that builds on partnerships, but that also builds in understanding what we understand by effective multilateralism. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and bringing again the political commitments topic into the discussion, and bringing the cities and UN, and again, I think building on what Stefan was saying about different partnerships. So speaking about political commitments, I would like to bring now floor to the mayors, to the cities. We will start with the city of Tbilisi, with Vakan. The city of Tbilisi is actually a pilot project in this joint UNDA project that we're working on with UN Habitat, UN DESA, and UCLG. So this is why Tbilisi is speaking first.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. As Mr. Dimitri mentioned, it's a special thanks to Ms. Gulnara because of Tbilisi's inclusion, active inclusion, process of sustainability management, measurement, and so on and so forth. Tbilisi is developing very fast, and in this process, so sustainability measurement means less mistakes on this path, because circumstances and the environment is changing very, very fast, and we are always on measuring and seeing problems and seeing truths, what is happening. Some history is full of falsification of data and falsification of analysis, and we always prefer to somehow to admit what are real problems and to face on them, and so documents created already and documents working on this will help us a lot. Thanks to UN Habitat, on 4th of July, our agreement on creation of Tbilisi VLR was signed, and on September 26th, previous week, we organized first meeting for counterparts of VLR process. As I have mentioned on panel today, 18 bodies were invited for this process. All municipal departments of Tbilisi city, 5 local entities, so 4 local entities of public law, and 1 non-private organization, and 2 private companies of Tbilisi City Hall, Tbilisi Transport Company, and field service group, which is responsible for recycling and gathering waste, and also city lights, street lights. Are involved in this process, and some of strategies, policy documents, and annual reports of city departments have already gathered. And as we know, I will brief because the process is just started in July, probably, or a maximum September. The first document will be published. And thank you to all of you for this help, and it's mainly for us awareness rising also, and popularizing issues which are against can be on person, if we will use allegory, who prefers to eat omelette today and not sharing to family chicken. Excuse me if vegans are also extended for this allegory, but process is very good and right, and we prefer to be part of this, and we are very happy that this is happening to Port Tbilisi. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I think this was very inspiring, because I think everything what was discussed at the very beginning about different sector cooperation, stakeholders, it's actually happening. So I think this is really, Tbilisi is very inspiring example. Congratulations. Now, pleasure to give floor to Mafra. Helder Sousa Silva, the mayor. Good to see you again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Gulnara. Thank you, UN Habitat, for the old. Thank you, Global Cities Hub, for this special invitation. I'm the privilege and the honor to share with you the worst VLR of the world. It's the Mafra VLR. You know why? Because it's the first Portuguese VLR approved in the. Sorry, do you have? I have some slides. It's very short, because it is the first Portuguese VLR approved in the last April, and this is the main reason, because I put this name is the worst VLR of the world, because the next revision will be the best one. Only 3 or 4 key issues that I would like to share with you. I heard speak Dmitry. Dmitry is not here with us, but I fully agree with Dmitry. The VLR, it's much more important. I'm suspicious to say that, because I'm a mayor. It's much more important because it's much more close to the people, and the implementation comes to the basis, to the top, not the top to the basis. This is the main reason, because I fully agree with Dmitry. And please, the next one. We involved in the beginning all the children in schools, and for me the most important is the commitment, is the involvement of all the community. But in our opinion and concerning our experience, the involvement of the schools, not only primary schools but secondary schools and all schools of the municipality, was the best way to reach the involvement of all the communities, not only the public communities, but also the privates, the enterprises, all the private sector was involved during this process. the second one, please. The problem that we deal in the beginning was the quality of data. It's very important because our data was not in line with the international data or also in the national data, because we use our local data to build our documents, but this big issue to put in line the data used during the construction of VLR with the international data, I think it's mandatory. It's a mandatory because we start by using the Municipal Sustainability Index. Is an index produced by the Catholic Portuguese University, but in a short term, we reach the level that the Catholic was not fine-tuned with the urban monitoring framework of UN Habitat. And we convinced Católica University to tune all the indicators with the urban monitoring framework. And nowadays it's 100% tuned and we speak a universal language. This VLR speaks a universal language. And this is a key issue. In start, 49% of public databases coming from the national level in the National Institute of Statistics, 35% internal data, and we need to go to the field. And we have done a local surveys asking to the people more indicators because we don't have this kind of info. This is the next one. Nowadays we are using, and this VLR use 62 indicators, full compatible, as I said, UMF, and in the end of process, I can say Mafra is a safe, secure, peaceful, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable municipality. But it is only in the beginning because we have a lot of work to do. Because the start for this way, it's in the beginning of the process because we have a very long path to do in the future. Another big issue, I'm kidding with my team that this book, if it is a dead book, if it is not a dynamic book, means increase of fire risk inside of my office. You know, this is the main reason because we need to visit this very useful tool all the days and to put this on the field. And to put this on the field, the last key issues is the following message. We are now focused not in the construction of VLR because we reached this goal a few months ago, but developing nowadays a pipeline of SDGs projects that are investable and bankable. We need to have money to put the SDG goals on the field. And also, it is a very important question, and it is a key issue. We need to join us, all the local banks, the national banks, the international funds, to have results. Otherwise, we'll be a dead VLR, and we don't want to have this kind of approach. For this, we have created in Mafra a SDG lab, a laboratory to put on the field these SDG projects. The second approach is we also sharing the replication of our experience to the other Lusophone cities. And for us, for the Portuguese-speaking countries, it is very important. And for this, we are now creating a Lusophone cities SDG hub to share the Portuguese experience, but not only the Portuguese, because, for example, the Brazilian country and the Brazilian municipalities, they have reached a very interesting level concerning VLRs. And to use this Lusophone community, we will spread this SDG spirit, positive spirit, around the Lusophone countries. Thank you very much. And once again, thank you very much for the invitation. Good night.
A very solid example of engaging children and schools is a great idea. It would be really very useful in each city. I mean, speaking about the local
sustainability. As you know, we have a song of SDGs.
Oh, really?
A special song sing by the children in school. Yes.
After a few drinks, you know.
It'll be the SDG anthem.
So, we heard a lot from our region, and we will hear more. I'm very pleased to give floor to Darius from Kube, Mayor of Dodoma in Tanzania. And we are extremely excited to have our colleagues, also mayors from other regions. I think it was extremely interesting exchange yesterday and today, so it's really our pleasure to hear you.
Thank you. That's from Kube. If I borrow some expressions from people in the media, we always say, no news is good news too. No news is also good news. We have not done any VLR in the city. So my contribution here is really to make some remarks on what we shouldn't actually do. We all implement many projects in our area of administration. Some fall under the category of normal schedules, and others are given special positions as projects. By the concept of a project, we have specified objectives, budget, and time frame. When we get lost with the VLRs and VNRs, is when we projectize this as one-time event, as something that after the SDGs, there's no more talking of VLRs. And I think that's one of the cardinal things that we are making, and which will continue keeping us lag behind all times, simply because you see, this is a project. I will not entrust the local governments to back on this one. It's better placed if it is housed in the central government. That actually underlies part of the reluctance to encourage local governments to embark on this. Unless they are mainstreamed with some important landmarks of time, we can be very pessimistic. We can almost forget the importance of carrying these exercises. But on the other hand, we do a lot of strategic planning in our offices. And part of that program will have situation analysis. This is where we talk about, we were supposed to do 1, 2, 4 things, but we did 1, 2. We are making an assessment. We want this to be participatory. The fact that this one is regarded as voluntary, probably there's no voluntarism in that. Is it voluntary that people are willing to live or not? But actually, it's giving a self-assessment. My remarks will have gone further to talk about the weaknesses in the decentralization framework. My counsel, among many, is through which the government funds are channeled to implement projects. But when I have to do that one, I'm checked if I had taken all the money there, which I will always convince the government I will. So what remains is that I don't put it on paper that I had allocated few shillings to this project. These are the results. Let me assess myself. Let the people, the intended beneficiaries, assess themselves to get that one. This would actually put more rationale on why the local level of the reviews should sound more important than otherwise. It's quite simple for the national government to sit in the offices, have the difference so that the VNRs should actually be a summation of what has been taking place elsewhere. For the interest of time, let me stop there. No news is also good news. I have not done any VLR, but I would wish to be engaged in one if I'm connected. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was, even though you're sitting at last VLR, I think you have a lot of insight in this, and I think it was very inspiring insight for us. I think it's really the connection between the technical assessment and complexities of the politics between the national and local government. I think we probably at the UN not always think about it. We're trying to resolve it by technical matters, but I think it's very useful for us to get reminded again that things are not straightforward. They are very political. And I really hope that today's studio brought a bit of, little step forward our discussion and bringing really the role of local governments and VLRs high on political agenda also at the national level. And this is why, thanks to Switzerland for all the support here for us in Geneva as well. Also for this event, because this support is very, this meeting is very important so that we could continue discussing this. So I want to take more time. I think I propose that if you have more questions and presentations, we have tomorrow a session about VLRs at Temples. Please join us. We will have more time to deliberate. Now I get back to Camelia for closing remarks and the next steps.
Thank you very much, Gulnara. And before we go to the reception, for some of us, actually, I decided to read the VLR of Mafra tonight. I've read some VLRs, they say, we are the best. You said, this is the worst VLR. So before doing this, I would just take literally 2 minutes to do the concluding remarks. I thought that the concluding remarks is a big responsibility because this is more or less what stays in the head. So it will be very short and very visual. So we talked about, may I ask if you hold this for me, please? So we thought that we spoke about, the N, so this is national, voluntary local reviews and voluntary national reviews. And there are a lot of connections between voluntary local reviews. So here you have networks, you have UN, you have cities talking to cities. You have a lot of connections between voluntary local reviews. And here you have the voluntary national reviews. And you also have a lot of connections. So states talk to states, states to states, and to the UN, and a lot of interaction also. So what is missing here, from what I've heard, from what I know, is actually the link. The link between voluntary local reviews and the voluntary national reviews. And this is actually what strikes me all the time. That means that the local reviews has to be presented in a process to the states. States has to be in the room when the local reviews are presented. So not only mayors to mayors, networks to mayors, but the link has to be established. Sorry for the bathroom. And this link can be established by adding E and K, and sorry for the orthographic mistake, international cooperation. So you're the ones, through processes, through something which is much better than HLPF, where the mayors are closed in our rooms, in one rooms, and the states are in another room, and they basically do not interact. This link has to be created by UN Habitat, by regional commissions, by all of us. So these voluntary local reviews interact with the voluntary national reviews. There is a process and there is an impact on the ground. Thank you.